The third time I've cried today. Sorry.
For your eyes.
I think so, and for my soul as well. Moshira Hassan is a marine ecologist. Yes, a marine ecologist. We have people from all fields here. She has over 20 years' experience in the Arab region, in Asia and the Caribbean, specializing in coral reefs and conservation. Moshira has worked in education and capacity building, using hands-on experiential learning, modern technologies, as well as classical teaching methods. A former associate professor at AUC, the American University in Cairo, where she taught biology, marine ecology, and environmental science, she is currently teaching at the Free University in Berlin. And she will talk to us about the role of academic field courses in the personal and professional development of young women. Moshira Hassan.
Good afternoon. As you see, we're moving from the spiritual connection to the earth right down to the biophysical earth. I hope I'm not completely in the wrong place with this kind of talk, but I'll do my best. So as Shada was just saying, I'm talking about a very narrow field of my work and my experience in how particular field trips deeply influence people. In fact, these academic field trips, they have such a profound impact and such a strong benefit for a large number of my students, especially women, that I feel it should be mandatory. And I'll explain why it has to be mandatory a bit later. Now, the focus of this presentation is specifically the 7 years I worked at the American University, where I taught a particular course, in this case, diversity of life. Well, we'll look into that then. Is anything happening here? Freezing? Okay, so just a bit about my personal background. I'm a conservationist of coral reefs and an educator, and I've done that for the last 30 years, starting as a guide and later diving instructor in the 80s in the Red Sea, moving on to training people in conservation. And I really, really enjoyed what I was doing, training people, anything from illiterate fishermen in Yemen up to professors in Saudi Arabia, professionals anywhere from the Caribbean to Thailand. And so I had a good mix of cultures, backgrounds, languages, and often within the same course. Now, what these activities all had in common, they were short-term, they were super intense. I like super intense. And they're always a combination of theory and definitely of field work. However, after the courses were over, and they could be anything from a few days to a few weeks, I lost connection largely with these people. I just maintained a loose connection. And that changed when I came to the American University in Cairo, where I had 7 years during which I remained with the same group of people, and I had a long-term relationship with them, and where I had the opportunity to bond and to mentor because of this long-term relationship. The other thing is that, students, they don't really have much of a choice. They're your captive audience, and they're with you, for better or for worse, for the duration of their studies. And, there are always different forms of teaching, but especially if we're talking about environmental science, marine biology, and ecology, well, clearly they have a strong component of outdoors work, not just lecturing and presentations and seminars. So again, being able to go out and spend more time, more intensively with people, I had a much greater opportunity for bonding and for influencing and for us to learn from each other. And so field trips, what do they do? I was a bit concerned about the word field trips at first, and I talked with my students and colleagues, and they said, if you're speaking to that audience, they might actually just think you're out there for an afternoon playing tabla on a felucca. It sounds like a trip for pleasure. Well, yeah, pleasure is in it, but, the focus is still academic content. And these field trips, they could be anything from an afternoon to several days. And well, if you look at these people here in the garden, you know, there's nothing wrong with combining fun and work. I'll be focusing on a several-day trip shortly. So what is the goal of field courses? I feel, you know, it seems to me to be the most logical thing that you want to do is that in terms of education, you want to go out and do something practical to enforce the theory. This needs to go together. I don't need to tell you that parents know that, educators around the world know that. When you're interested in conservation, you have another aspect, another motivation come in here because you feel, or I feel, that you need people to see. They need to acquire knowledge and they need to acquire appreciation. These are the two ingredients without which conservation cannot happen. And I was hoping that I could instill that by taking the people out into the real world. Hang on. So here, if we have here this picture of the desert, it's not exactly the thing which the first person would consider environment in Egypt. It's often considered, you know, the desert, there is the environment, and then there's the desert, as in something being outside of the environment. Whereas, in fact, you know, people also need to appreciate every little bit of nature. As you can see, my focus was on conservation and on content. I had no thought whatsoever. It was not part of my program to deal with personal development. That's not my agenda, that's not why I was there. And I most certainly had no specific interest in gender issues or dealing with women in any special way. That came later. But having said that I was not particularly interested in development, I forget a rather important point, and that is that my creed throughout all my teaching and all my life has been for people to try to push their limits. Get the most out of you. Go out, don't do this. I can't do this. Try it. And this has impacted the lives of many people. Now coming to that particular course called Diversity of Life, which is a course geared for first-year students. However, other semesters might join. It is a biology course. It is not an ecology, marine, or anything course. It's a general first-year course in which also other people could participate. We also had students from political science. We had them from business. We had, mostly biology, but a few others as well. And it was not a segregated course. Girls and boys were in there. And as I said, it included this particular field trip in which we go to Sinai and study organisms and ecosystems there. Multiple days, very intensive. There's a lot of physical activities and it's challenging. I'll keep harping on these words because I think they're so important. And in fact, at this point, I'd already bring in the physical aspect of it. It's not the same as going out and looking at things. Putting yourself into it, getting exhausted, getting your hands dirty, if you will, is another aspect. Well, surprise. I thought I'm going to do a field trip, everybody's going to come, like, whee, we're going to play. And the biggest surprise ever was that many students didn't want to go. Utterly incomprehensible for me. Partly it's like, hang on, why are you studying biology? Go work in a bank, Here, we're all about life. We need to go out to life. And unfortunately, I also have to say that it was especially the women that didn't want to go out. To this day, I don't think, it's justified, but I would still like to share with you the reasons I gleaned out of why they didn't want to go. Now, one is mostly their preference to stay at home with their friends and do things city kids like to do. Because this is a university in Cairo, they're all city kids. But there's more to it, and these points are especially relevant to women, but not exclusively. Many of them lacked self-confidence and felt, no, I'm wary of what I don't know. I don't want to go there. I don't know what this is. I might not be able to do well. And this unknown remember, freshman students in Cairo often, many of them, over half of them, had never traveled without their parents before, ever. They'd never gone to Sinai, they'd never seen the desert, they'd never seen a reef. It's unknown, therefore I do not want. In terms of girls, you also have this studious. A good girl is a girl, you know, in school I sat behind my books and I learned, and this is what I'm going to continue doing in university, and this is the way I'm going to work later on. There was also a very strong thing about, there is uncertainty about whether it's proper to travel and whether it is okay religiously to do so. And there are always the parents who say no, but I assure you that a lot of the girls use their parents as an excuse for other issues that have them not want to go. Unacceptable. I don't care what the reasons are, it's unacceptable. You cannot learn about nature without going to nature. It's just not on. I mean, if you're out here somewhere, these are your salt lakes in Ras Mohammed, you can learn about them, but it's not the same as going out there. It's hot, your feet are crunching over the salt, you smell sulfur, you see these plants in the middle of it. Come on folks, you need to go to see. How are you going to understand a reef unless you've seen it? I mean, this is just not possible. We have to go out. But, you know, if we're talking about my motivation, so there are a few things that come in. Clearly, there's the educational aspect, but in addition, there's this very deep personal wish to share, to show and share. It is impossible for me to fathom that people would not see this. I want them to know their country, and I could not stand the idea of the girls thinking that they can't do it within their whole film of what a girl can or cannot do. I explained, I pleaded, I talked with the parents, I threatened with bad grades, I did almost everything but fall on my knees to convince them to come. Well, eventually, you know, I'm not going to go into the detail, but it was tough convincing them, and in my mind, whenever I almost gave up on them, like, oh God, not again, you're not with me discussing again that you don't want to go. But I'd always stop again and say, like, hang on a moment, you know, here I am, and I'm willing. And I'm a marine biologist, so I know what you're going to look at. I happen to be a diving instructor. I'm trained to, and I have the experience to take care of your safety. And I'm a woman. Hang on, you know, if I don't put all my effort into this, these girls might live for 50 years without ever seeing it. It's not an option of not doing this course. They might never, ever experience it. For that, I was ready, you know, to accommodate anything. You know, if they need segregation, we'll segregate. I run between two beaches, you know, hear the girls for a moment, then I run over to the other and teach the boys in the other beach. I mean, seriously. We need to accommodate clothing requirements, sleeping arrangements. They could bring their brothers, mothers, whomever they like to join us. Anything you need, tell me what you need to come and we will do it. In the 7 years, there are only 2 girls who didn't join on the trip.
Well done.
Yeah. There's another point in this. After all this accommodating all their needs, in the end, I still evaluated them according to the exactly same criteria like the boys. Now, we accommodate you, yes, but you're not getting any slack here. You can't say like, hey, I'm a girl, I did it, and on all of that. None of that. No, you need to go and run with the boys, and all of us can do the same thing. So what did we actually do? I'll just run you through a few ecosystems which you might never have heard of and might never go to visit, but just to give you an idea. We start in Hammam Firaun, where we look at hot springs and bacteria, something which a normal person would go like, ew, it smells bad, it's all gunk, but in fact it's really exciting. From there on, we go to Sabkhas, which are huge mats, again, of bacteria. We go, of course, to living coral reefs where we spend a lot of time. We have walks in fossil coral reefs. We go visit deserts. We look at salt marshes. We go look at the mangroves. And we do all of this in 5 days. Now, that's a lot to take in. And in addition to wanting them to see this, you know, we had to accommodate that all of this had to be crammed into 5 days. It was tough. It was often compared to boot camp. We wake up at 6 o'clock, when you're here at 7 with your breakfast, you've got your notebook, I open my mouth and it's content. We went snorkeling 1 to 3 times a day, and we went walking, hiking in the heat of the sun, between all sorts of activities. There was no slack. You pick up your books and try to find out what you just saw. They did this right into, until the last bit of night, and at night we continue with it. A lot. Now, what was the immediate feedback? The immediate feedback was, oh yeah, great, but hey, this was too much work. This was not okay. Of course, a lot of them thought it was wonderful, but I'm talking about those who were problematic and who evolved. By the end of the course, and at least at the end of the semester, they had moved from, too much work. Yeah, it was too much work, but really, it was really good. And by the end of their studies, it turned into, I never learned as much in such a short space of time. And in fact, I learned a lot more than just the content, both academically and personally. So, talking about some of these things in which you accommodate people, here's a girl who was veiled, didn't know how to swim, was afraid of the water, and it was a big drama. Okay, she gets personal attention, in this case by me. Whatever you need, I'll do it. Some girls, they were less fearful, and here I am with 3, again, veiled girls who don't know how to swim. And on the right, in black, is a girl who was one of my absolutely most horrid candidates in the first year. And then she turned around and she assisted me 2 years later in the course, and that's her teaching them. It's not only an issue of girls. You have boys as well. This one here, he was, his parents came in and said, my son is hydrophobic. He's afraid of the water. He can go with you, but he's not allowed to swim. And anyway, he doesn't know how to swim. And anyway, his eyesight is bad. And anyway, he can't do it. Well, that guy's really hot a professional today. But it's not only about water. People have different challenges. This is not the guy who had the problem. I didn't want to show the picture of a girl who came to me at the end of her university studies and said, that one little hill, climbing up that has changed my life. That's the one she meant. Whatever's a challenge for you, different people have different challenges. The outcomes were, of course, an enormous academic gain, but very much a shift in motivation and work ethics. Some of them started off literally hand in hip. You want me to come? Do everything so that I can come. And by the 3rd day, it had turned into, we're going to find a solution. Okay, I really don't want to be anywhere around, but I'll do it. I'll find a way. And what they saw is girls can do everything boys can do. Come on. And they can do that without sacrificing on propriety, religious beliefs, or femininity. It opened possibilities. All of a sudden, all these things that they never thought about not being able to do them, they just parked them. They just nothing to do with my life. So what then are the ingredients of this success? Well, of course you need to make it interesting, relevant, exciting, that standard educator stuff. But that's not enough. I believe it has to be challenging and people have to leave their zone of comfort to grow. And going out on a 5-day trip, you really have to disconnect from your everyday life. You come back, otherwise you go home and talk to your friends and you're back into you go out and party at night. No, you need to stay together and disconnect. As an instructor, you need to make sure that them venturing out of their comfort zone is a success. You don't want them to move out there and get whacked on the head. No good. And as I said, it's physically exhausting. And by doing this, you're here I'm sort of in the theme of this meeting. What we have in this course is, on these trips, you've got the absolute strong intellectual challenge. You've got them crossing zones and a lot of spiritual, psychological things happening, and you've got the physical part of your bodies being really into it. So you've got a good mix, which got the people in their entire being. And I think in this context, it was actually very important that it was mixed and that this whole thing was not geared to strengthen women. It was about, you're normal. We're just going to do our things and we're all normal and we can all do it together. timing was crucial. This course was in the first year, and as everybody who's done any form of education, especially with women, knows, you teach them independence, you teach them self-awareness, confidence, yada, yada, yada. They come into the next phase of life and poof, it all falls away. You go to university, poof, now I'm grown up, now everything's different. Or they graduate, or they marry, or they have kids. And at each one of these junctions, some people fall out and you have to start all over again. Now, at the beginning of university studies, it's the first time they're have some degree of independence. That is good, because they can grow. But in effect, it is often negative because they know they could grow and change, and therefore they block. And so, you don't want them to start university with blocking. You want to catch them early on, before they block everything up, and so that in that phase, they can already make life choices. What is necessary for this? You definitely need committed instructors who are qualified. It's difficult to commit, it's a lot of hard work, and institutions need to help instructors to commit to this kind of thing. You need to accommodate students and leave no one behind. A big effort also, but worth it and important. Of course you need funding, that goes without saying. And I think it has to be mandatory. What I've seen from my students, if it had not been mandatory, they would not have joined, full stop. They've done amazing things. I mean, nothing is just emotional. I mean, they've went out and they've done wonderful things. We're talking about a girl who did not want to come and eventually said, I'm going to become Minister of Environment. She isn't quite there yet, but like, whoa, this is different, big, big differences. So what's the reward? The reward is that you can help people, not just the girls, but people become strong and pursue their lives, not necessarily what I care about, but what they care about.
Well done, really. It's wonderful and inspiring, and I'm sorry again. But these are happy tears. Okay, well, it's 2:20. We were supposed to have lunch at 2, so I'm giving you a choice. We will have a short discussion now, 10 minutes, with these ladies, and then can we postpone the discussion with Iman and Shahinaz and Miriam to the last session? If you're hungry, shall we do that? How many people want to have lunch at 2:30? And how many others shall we do both discussions now? Because I really believe that this is for the discussions now. All right, is that okay with the library? Is about lunch being at 3 instead of, is it possible?